You know, it's funny. We talk about VR like transporting us to these amazing worlds, these incredible simulations, but then we're stuck holding these clunky controllers. It's like we're trying to escape into the future with one foot stuck in the past.
Yeah, it is a bit ironic. Like, we're
Hmm.
promised this totally immersive experience, but the way we interact with it still feels oddly disconnected.
Yeah.
Like we're still holding this piece of plastic.
And this blog post by Chris Burgess really dives into that. He used to lead developer tools at Ultraleap. They're a company that like lives and breathes hand tracking. He's seen firsthand both the potential and the pitfalls.
Yeah, and what's so fascinating is that the tech itself isn't new. The ability to track hand movements in VR has been around for a while, but as Burgess argues, the real hurdle is how developers are approaching it.
Instead of starting from scratch, they just try to adapt their controller-based code,
Exactly. It's like trying to use a TV remote to operate your smartphone.
right?
You can kind of make it work, but the experience is going to be clunky at best.
Totally. And he gives a great example of this. He talks about how with controllers, you're stuck with pointing and clicking, but with
Mhm.
hands, you can rotate, you can sense pressure, you can even use individual
Yeah,
fingers.
all those micro movements,
It opens up a world of possibilities for more natural interactions.
for sure. And so the tech is there, the potential is there. Why hasn't it taken off?
Yeah.
And Burgess points to tools like Unity's XR Interaction Toolkit. It's a good step forward.
Unity's the big dog when it comes to building VR experiences.
They are.
Their XR Interaction Toolkit, we'll just call it XRI for short,
Yeah,
that was designed to make adding hand tracking easier.
right.
But it still felt like a compromise, right? Trying to be a one-size-fits-all solution for every kind of VR experience.
It is. And, Burgess, having worked on the developer side, knew that to really unlock the power of hand tracking, you needed something more tailored, more nuanced, enter physical hands.
Okay, this is where it gets juicy. Physical hands isn't just about tracking, it's about giving developers the building blocks to design truly intuitive hand interactions. He actually came up with 3 distinct contact modes to make this work.
And this is about fundamentally changing how we think about interacting in virtual spaces, making it more intuitive, more immersive. And he did that by asking a simple question. How do we use our hands in the real world?
Okay, let's break these modes down. First up, hard contact. This one's all about direct physical interaction. You want to push something, push it, grab something, grab it.
Yeah, think about the potential there for training simulations. You can learn how to operate machinery, perform delicate tasks, and because it's so intuitive, the learning curve is drastically reduced. You're not thinking about which button to press. You're just
Right.
doing.
Your hands already know what to do. Though Burgess does point out a catch with hard contact. If the tracking is even slightly off, if your virtual hand doesn't perfectly mirror your real hand, it can get weird fast.
Yeah, he talks about the uncanny valley.
Oh.
Our brains are surprisingly good at picking up on those inconsistencies. A tiny misalignment, and suddenly the immersion is shattered.
Which leads us to the next mode, right? Soft contact.
Exactly. Think of this as a middle ground. You still have freedom of movement. You can push and pull things. But to actually pick something up, you need to make a deliberate gesture.
So you're less likely to accidentally knock something over just by brushing past it.
Exactly. It
Yeah.
prevents those accidental interactions that can disrupt the flow while still giving you a strong sense of control.
Makes sense. And then there's no contact mode. This one sounds almost counterintuitive.
On the surface, yes. It strips interaction down to the bare essentials. Grab and drop.
But there are situations where that streamlined simplicity would be incredibly valuable.
Right, absolutely. Imagine tasks where efficiency is key, like sorting objects in a warehouse or moving files in a virtual workspace.
Huh, interesting.
No contact cuts out the noise, reduces cognitive load, and allows for laser focus.
It's fascinating how even the absence of touch in a way can enhance the feeling of control and purpose in those contexts. But Burgess does warn that this mode needs to be introduced thoughtfully.
You can't just throw users into an environment where they expect to interact freely and then take that away.
Yeah.
It's about setting the right expectations and using no contact strategically.
Like, here's this powerful tool for this specific purpose, not we've taken away your ability to do all the things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, there's another crucial aspect of physical hands that we should mention. Burgess and his team designed it to be compatible with OpenXR.
OpenXR, for those new to the VR world, it can sound a bit technical.
Think of it like this. Right now, if a developer builds a VR experience for, say, one particular headset, there's a good chance it won't work on another headset without a ton of extra work.
It's like every VR headset speaks a different language.
Precisely. OpenXR wants to be the universal translator, so developers can build an experience once and it'll work smoothly across a wide range of hardware. This is huge for encouraging more developers to experiment with and adopt hand tracking.
And that's what's so cool about what Burgess is doing here. He's not just advocating for his own tool. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's pushing for a more open and collaborative approach to VR development in general.
He is. It's about saying, hey, we think this is the way to go. Come on, let's build it together.
Right. Because if we can get this right, the potential applications are mind-blowing. Imagine a surgeon being able to operate remotely using their hands, but without ever having to physically be in the operating room.
Or an architect designing a building in virtual space, feeling the textures of the materials, experiencing the light and shadow firsthand.
Or even something as simple as playing a musical instrument with the same nuance and expression as in real life, but without any physical limitations.
Exactly. It's about breaking down barriers and opening up a world of creative and practical possibilities that we can barely even imagine yet.
Speaking of innovation, something else that really struck me was how much emphasis Burgess puts on the visuals of hand tracking. It's not enough for your hands to just move correctly in VR. It's about how convincingly that movement is reflected on screen.
Right. He talks about how even with hard contact, if the virtual hand doesn't line up perfectly with your real hand even a little bit,
Right.
it could be really off-putting.
It's like that uncanny valley effect.
Right.
We instinctively know something's not quite right, even if we can't put our finger on it.
Exactly. I actually had this experience with a VR game recently. The hand movements were mostly fine, but just slightly off.
Mm.
And it totally ruined the immersion for me.
Wow.
Like, I knew something was wrong.
It's amazing how sensitive we are to those little details. Our brains are hardwired for that real-world accuracy.
They are. And that's why it's so interesting how with soft contact, even if your hand passes through a virtual object because you haven't quite made the grab gesture, it somehow feels less jarring.
Interesting. It's like, as long as the overall movement feels natural, our brains are a little more forgiving of those visual glitches.
Which just goes to show how much we take for granted about our own hands.
Right.
We don't even think about how they adjust to different shapes and textures, how we grip things with just the right amount of pressure.
It's only when you try to recreate that in a virtual environment that you realize how incredibly complex it all is.
It is. And that's what makes this work that Burgess and his team did on physical hands so compelling. They weren't just trying to make hand tracking more accurate. They were trying to understand the underlying principles of human dexterity
Fascinating.
and then translate that into a set of tools that developers could use to create truly natural and intuitive interactions.
Yeah, instead of trying to make our hands conform to the limitations of technology, they were trying to design technology that works with our natural instincts.
Exactly.
And by making those tools open source and compatible with OpenXR, they're essentially inviting the whole industry to join this movement towards a more intuitive and immersive future for VR.
Right. It's that same kind of open source ethos, sharing knowledge, building together. That led to the internet as we know it.
It's true. It's like, here's an amazing foundation. Let's see what you can build on top of it. Who knows what incredible experiences we'll see in the coming years. It's like we're finally starting to see beyond the hype, beyond the limitations of early VR, and get a glimpse of that truly transformative potential it holds.
It's the difference between novelty and true disruption, right? Like for years, VR felt like it was always just around the corner. But with this shift toward natural interaction, toward truly harnessing the power of our hands, it feels like we might finally be turning that corner.
And what I appreciate about Burgess is that he's not shying away from the challenges. He's not blindly saying, hand tracking is here, it's perfect, everything else is obsolete.
He's very clear that it's not just about slapping some sensors on and calling it a day.
Yeah.
We need to rethink how we design experiences from the ground up.
Right, exactly. Those 3 contact modes we talked about are a perfect example. It's about recognizing that there's no one-size-fits-all solution.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need that precision of soft contact, sometimes the freedom of hard contact, and yes, sometimes even the stripped-down efficiency of no contact is the perfect tool for the job.
It is. It's about understanding the nuances of human interaction, how we instinctively adapt to different situations, how our brains perceive feedback, and then building technology that works with those instincts instead of against them.
Makes you wonder, what else are we overlooking? What other seemingly simple things that we do effortlessly in the real world could unlock entirely new possibilities when translated to the virtual world?
That's what I find so exciting. We're really just scratching the surface here. As this technology evolves, as we get better at understanding the interplay between the physical and the virtual, who knows what we'll discover.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, one last question for you. What's the most compelling aspect of this for you personally? What gets you excited about the future of hand tracking?
For me, it's the potential to level the playing field. Imagine a world where physical limitations no longer prevent someone from pursuing their passions, whether it's painting, playing music, or even something like surgery. Hand tracking could give people abilities they never thought possible. That's a future worth striving for.
Absolutely. It's not just about cooler gadgets. It's about empowering people, expanding our horizons, and fundamentally changing how we interact with the world around us.
And who knows, maybe one day we'll look back on those clunky controllers like we look back on rotary phones.
Right.
A quaint relic of the past.
A fascinating thought. Well, on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into the world of hand tracking. We hope this conversation has sparked your curiosity and given you a glimpse into the exciting possibilities that lie ahead. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep reaching for those transformative experiences.